Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2015 GMC Acadia, we're going to be showing you how to install the Blue Ox base plate kit with removable arms. But before we get into that, why don't we take a minute, check this out, and make sure it's going to work for you. Before we jump right in, I figured it'd be useful just to kind of touch base and refresh yourselves on the main components that we're going to need to flat tow our Acadia down the road in the first place. And the first part is going to be the base plate. That's going to provide us with a solid and reliable attachment point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. So tow bar will be the set component. It's going to plug into the front of your base plate and connect to the back of your motorhome. So it's going to be the physical link that's actually pulling your vehicle. The third main part will be safety cables, and those will clip onto the base plate into the hitch of your motorhome and just be a secondary connection in case of an accidental disconnect. It'll keep everything paired together. The fourth main component will be tow bar wiring, and what that's going to do, you'll have a cable that'll come from the back of your motorhome, plug into the front of your vehicle, and that's going to allow it to transfer all the lighting functions, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main part will be a supplemental braking system, and what that's going to do is apply the brakes in your GMC whenever you hit the brakes in your motorhome, helping to bring you to a more predictable and complete stop. One thing I do always like to point out is how your vehicle is going to look whenever you're not flat towing it, because chances are pretty good you're not always going to be pulling it behind your motorhome. And with this setup, I really don't think it can get a whole lot better. I mean, you can see it, but that's just kind of the nature of it, right? You're adding a base plate to the front of your vehicle, but I think it does an okay job of blending in. You know, it has a matte black finish, so it kind of, starts to kind of disappear in the bottom of your grill, and everything's spaced apart evenly, and it isn't a huge eyesore by any means, at least in my opinion. When you are ready to use it though, it's simple. It's going to have some removable arms, and so to put them in, you pull out these caps that they give you to keep the base plate protected. And then you just take the removable arm, going to put that in, rotate it about a quarter turn. It'll lock into place. Same thing on this side. And then that's going to allow you to hook up your tow bar to it. So this base plate will work with most Blue Ox tow bars and other tow bars on the market made by other manufacturers, and that's because there are adapter ends available. So let's say if you have a Roadmaster tow bar, for example, with a different end, chances are good you can get that adapter end, convert your tow bar, and allow you to pair up to the Blue Ox base plate. I do like how the base plate has an attachment point already kind of built in, so you can mount up your wiring connector. It makes it easy. That's not always the case with every base plate. Sometimes you have to make your own bracket, or it's not really ideal. So it's good to see that, and just keeps things organized. Everything's symmetrical and easy to see and easy to use, which is really important. But other than that, at the end of the day, I mean, a base plate you really can't go wrong with. It looks decent and is user friendly, so can't really ask for too much more. As far as getting this installed, it definitely wasn't the hardest one that I've done, nor the easiest. You do have to remove the fascia, and you do have to do some drilling, but that's almost normal for a base plate on a vehicle like this. So if you'd like to see how that's done, feel free to stick around. We'll go ahead and install it together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the front of our Acadia, and we need to remove the front fascia. So I pop the hood, and first thing that we're going to do is remove this big plastic radiator cover that's held in place with a total of 10 push pin fasteners, 5 on each side. This is what the fasteners are going to look like, and to get them out, you can use a flathead screwdriver, pry underneath the head of it, and work the whole thing out. And we'll just continue along, getting the remaining fasteners removed. With all the push pins removed, we can lift up on our radiator cover and set it to the side, and then that will expose some other fasteners that we need to take off. So we're going to have some Torx bits. I believe this is a T15. Pull that one off. We'll work our way down here, and then if you kind of go back towards our headlight, I missed one here. I have to change out to a 7mm. Pull that out. But we'll just continue along here. We're going to have several more of those Torx bit screws, and one more 7mm screw. Now if we move to our wheel well edge, we're going to have 4 fasteners that we need to pull out. It does help if you turn your wheel in one way or the other. It gives you some more space. I want to mention from this point on, anything we do to one side of our vehicle, we'll do to the other side. It'll be set up the same. But T20 Torx bit. And get all these removed. Underneath the vehicle now, just in front of our front tire, along the edge of our bumper, we're going to have 2 more T20 Torx bit fasteners. Get these out of the way. And then we can change over to a 10mm socket. We're going to have this bolt right there. Now back to your wheel well. If you take the liner and kind of push it over out of the way, where your fascia meets the quarter panel along the edge there, you're going to have 3 7mm head screws. So the head of the screw will be on the bottom and the screw will be pointing up. So we'll get our socket and get all of those removed. Now we're ready to take our fascia off. I did put some painter's tape along the seam here. That way you don't scratch it up on accident or anything. And then I found too, if you spray soapy water in that seam, it kind of helps loosen everything up. But we're going to start at the corner here. And sometimes this will unclip real easy. Other times you might have to take a small screwdriver or something and just kind of help guide it out of there. And we'll work our way around to the front. And it looks like we probably will have to disconnect our fog lights. So with these, you kind of just pull out on each side there. Separate it. And it looks like we're all clear on the other side, so now we can just set this off to the side, out of the way. With the fascia off, now we can remove our ambient air temp sensor, which is this here. To do that, carefully kind of start to spin it, and it should pop out of the bracket, and then we'll remove the bracket. So this is just a push pin fastener, like the other ones that we removed earlier. Pry the fastener out, and get this out of the way. Just over here on the driver's side, we need to trim this little flap off here. So you can remove the push pin fastener, and then this is just like a soft rubber. I'm just going to use a pair of snips to get this trimmed off. That way it doesn't interfere with our base plate. And then on both sides, we're going to have to trim this portion here of this big support bracket. So there's a diagram and instructions. I want you to cut out this little area here. Some of it's plastic, some of it's metal. So take your time while you're doing this, especially, make sure you don't have lines or anything around here. You obviously don't want to damage anything when you're trimming this out. So I'm going to use a hacksaw and a Dremel tool, probably just a variety of different types of cutting tools to get this material removed. Got all this trimmed out, and I just came back with a file just to kind of smooth down all the rough edges, make it a little bit safer to work in this area. And since we have some exposed metal now, I'm just going to cover it with some spray paint just to help prevent rust and corrosion. And while this is drying, I'll do the other side. If you look at our bumper beam, these two bottom bolts on each side of the vehicle, we're going to pull those out using a 15mm socket. These are going to be one of the attachment points that we use to secure the base plate. So all the hardware that you're going to use to secure the base plate, you want to put on some Loctite on the threads. We'll have to get this separately. And now we can get the base plate slid into position here. Lined up, and I'll get one bolt started on each side, hand tight. That way it will support itself. Once you have all that hardware in place, we can come back with a torque wrench and tighten it down to the amount specified in the instructions. Now what we're going to need to do on the side of our frame rails here, we're going to have this small hole. We're going to create another hole next to it. That way it'll be an access hole, because in a minute we're going to drill a couple other holes where bolts are going to go up through, and we're going to use this opening here to get our handle nut inside of the frame. So I have a hole saw, and I'll just get that drilled out. With that hole drilled out, I used a file to kind of smooth out some of the rough and sharp edges. Came back, shot some spray paint on it to protect that bare metal. So all that paint's drying. Underneath now, you're going to have two holes in your base plate, one here and one here, and we're going to use those as a guide to drill the hole into the frame. That way our hardware can pass through and bolt down the base plate. Now what we can do is take our handle nuts and bend them in a manner to where when we put these in the access hole, they're going to line up with the holes that we just drilled in the bottom of the frame. When you are bending these, be careful. Don't try to put too much pressure there where it's connected, because you don't want that to break off. And it's also not a bad idea, before you put the red Loctite on the bolt, just to take it and run it through there, make sure there's no junk, inside of the threads, because this isn't the easiest thing to do, so you want these to be clean. That way the bolt will start real easy. But with that said, I've got ours bent in a manner to where it'll be close. I'll put that in, then go on the bottom side and line it up. Do our best to get this lined on up. And then you can take that bolt, split lock washer, put on your red Loctite, and get this started hand tight. This is kind of finesse. You'll just want it, it'll probably take you a couple tries, but you'll kind of feel it catch those threads, and once it does, you know you're in pretty good shape. Once you have one of them started, we want to snug it down and torque it, because if we move on to the other ones and that Loctite starts to harden, a lot of times you can break off the handle nut and it makes it difficult. So we'll do these one at a time. 19mm 3/4 inch socket. snug that down, and come back with our torque wrench and get it properly tightened. Once both of the handle nuts are in and torqued down, then you want to come back with a pair of snips and clip off the remaining portion of the handle. So now you want to take the safety cables and convenience links and use them to wrap it around the frame. You really don't have a ton of spots to go, so wherever it's open and not in the way of anything. Those are going to then go to your base plate. That's really all there is to it. I do like to take some zip ties and put them on here and there just to kind of keep everything solid and prevent it from rattling or bouncing around. And you'll want to make sure to do that on the other side of the vehicle as well. Now we can grab our ambient air temperature sensor bracket, and what we're going to do is trim it almost in half. Essentially, we're just going to get rid of this portion here that it was originally mounted to. And that's because when you go to put this up, if you leave it like this, there's not enough room. This will hit. So by getting rid of that and then drilling a new hole, we can mount this back up and remount up our temp sensor. Now we can drill out a hole in the bracket. That way we can mount up our sensor again and get it reinstalled. Went ahead, plugged our sensor back in there, and this will just go back up into position. Originally, when our bracket was sitting up here like this, our sensor kind of plugged into the back of it, but the base plate's going to be in the way, so we're just going to flip the sensor around, and that'll be perfectly fine. It'll still be able to do its job, and that'll give us the clearance that we need to get this put back up into position. At this point, it'd be a great opportunity to install your other flat towing components like wiring and a braking system. And I say it because you have all this extra room to work, just makes it a lot easier. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Once I'm finished up, we'll come back, trim our fascia, and get it reinstalled. So if you're at the same point, that's what I suggest doing. If you already have that stuff on, hang tight. We'll get to the fascia and reinstalling it in just a minute. Once your wiring and everything else is on the front, like we talked about, get our fascia trimmed out. So you can hold it up in place, and it looks like we shouldn't have to trim out too much. I made some marks here where I think we need to cut, and we'll get them cut out, see if it fits. If not, we can always remove more material. So essentially, it looks like our safety chain tabs should come through one of the existing openings, and where we actually plug our removable arms in, that's where we need to cut. So I'm just going to take a pair of snips here and get this trimmed out. Come to find out, try to put the fascia on. It looks like the safety chain attachments are going to be hitting this upright here, so we'll just cut those off flush and try again. But from the looks of it, after these are removed, we should be in pretty good shape in terms of the clearance that we need. So with our modifications made, we should be able to kind of swing everything into place. And kind of work our fascia back onto the vehicle. I was able to get the fascia completely reinstalled and really didn't have to do a ton of modifications after what I just showed you guys. There was one little spot where I just had to kind of come in and trim up just a little bit more around where our base plate comes through, but nothing crazy. So got it all bolted up back together, and now we're ready to go. But with that said, that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Blue Ox baseplate kit on our 2015 GMC Acadia.